Walk through any cemetery, and you'll walk over a graveyard of unlived dreams. Buried 6 feet under polished granite lies the novel never written, the business never launched, the apology never spoken, the love never pursued. These aren't tragedies of circumstance. They're murders of convenience, executed by the very hands that dreamed them. Napoleon Hill uncovered the bullet casing at the scene of this crime over a century ago. The majority of men meet with failure because of their lack of persistence in creating new plans to take the place of those which fail. But I'll strip the veneer off that truth until it bleeds raw. Most people die with their dreams intact because they never weaponized their purpose. They carried their vision like a museum artifact, precious, fragile, behind glass. Never like a sword forged in the fires of non-negotiable intent. Look at Edison's laboratory ashes in 1914. 67 years old. Millions gone. Years of work vaporized. Most would have buried their dream with the rubble. Edison stood in the embers and declared, "Thank God all our mistakes are burned up. Now we can start fresh." Before the smoke cleared, he'd secured funding to rebuild larger. That's not resilience. That's the terrifying force of a man whose purpose had metastasized into his bones. Your dream isn't dying from external conditions. It's suffocating in the vacuum of your unresolved why. Purpose isn't a pretty mission statement. It's the primal scream that overrides fear's paralysis. Carnegie didn't build an empire because he loved steel. He was driven by the searing memory of watching his mother pawn her wedding ring to feed them. Ford didn't revolutionize manufacturing for prestige. His farm boy hatred of backbreaking labor crystallized into the Model T's assembly line. Their purposes weren't philosophical. They were biological imperatives, like oxygen, like blood. Now excavate your own soul. What injustice sets your teeth on fire? What mediocrity feels like treason to your potential? When Lincoln stared into the abyss of civil war, he didn't cling to political strategy. He anchored to a purpose that vibrated in his handwriting. If slavery isn't wrong, nothing is wrong. That clarity turned debates into battle cries. Your why must be so violently alive that it transforms obstacles into kindling. Walt Disney's bankers called his theme park dream a carnival nightmare. He didn't argue. He mortgaged his life insurance. Purpose doesn't negotiate. It burns bridges. It hijacks your nervous system. It turns can't into physiological heresy. The cemetery is full of people who had values. The pantheon is filled with those who had codes. Here's the fatal miscalculation: waiting for clarity before action. Clarity isn't a prerequisite. It's a byproduct of momentum. Rockefeller didn't begin with Standard Oil's empire blueprint. He started brokering potatoes at 16, sharpening his instincts in the mud. Picasso painted 15,000 pieces before Guernica. Action isn't the finale of understanding. It's the scalpel that dissects truth. Ford's first car sputtered and died in his workshop. He didn't retreat to draft better plans. He tore it apart in the grease. Failure is the opportunity to begin again more intelligently. Wasn't a motivational poster. It was the smell of transmission fluid on his hands. Every time you delay action for perfect conditions, you're embalming your dream. Study the Wright brothers' 1903 diaries. Crashed again. Frame shattered. Will rebuild by dawn. Their workshop wasn't a lab. It was an emergency room for dreams. They understood what Hill later codified. Action is the real measure of intelligence, not contemplation, not analysis. Motion generates insight, like friction generates sparks. Your procrastination isn't laziness. It's fear masquerading as intellect. Edison knew this when he tested 6,000 plant fibers for the light bulb filament. He didn't research. He incinerated possibilities at 3 a.m. until bamboo screamed the answer. The world's most lethal addiction? the anesthesia of familiarity, the gravitational pull of enough. Carnegie warned of this in his ironclad law. The man who acquires the ability to take full possession of his own mind may take possession of anything else to which he is justly entitled. Yet most surrender their minds to the narcotic of comfort. They build a shrine to their past achievements and kneel there until their dreams fossilize. Study the collapse of empires. Blockbuster laughed at Netflix's DVD mailers. Kodak invented the digital camera, then buried it to protect film. They didn't fail from ignorance. They overdosed on nostalgia for what already worked. Contrast this with Darwin's brutal self-command. Whenever I find a published fact opposing my conclusions, I write it down immediately, for I know I'll forget it faster than arguments supporting my views. That's intellectual anti-fragility. Lincoln practiced this during the Civil War's darkest hours, reading Confederate newspapers to shatter his biases. Your mind isn't a sanctuary, it's a war room. Decorate it with uncomfortable truths. Hang your failures on the walls like trophies. When Henry Ford's engineers insisted the V8 engine was impossible, he didn't debate. He snapped, "Produce it or leave. I'm paying for execution, not opinions." 2 years later, the V8 revolutionized transportation. Comfort is the quicksand that swallows legacies. Legacy isn't built in milestones. It's forged in micro-resolves. The 4:30 a.m. pages Hemingway wrote drunk or sober. Marie Curie isolating radium in a leaking shed, her fingertips burning. Michelangelo on his back in the Sistine chapel, plaster blinding him. I endure this purgatory for the resurrection of beauty. Hill called it the sustained application of will to purpose. I call it the brutal arithmetic of showing up when inspiration's dead. Carnegie tracked every minute of his steelworkers' shifts, not to punish, but to murder inefficiency. Beethoven composed his Ninth Symphony deaf, biting a rod attached to his piano to feel vibrations. Their discipline wasn't routine, it was sacred warfare against entropy. Your daily ritual is the trench where empires are won. At 80, Picasso still painted 10 hours a day. When asked why, he growled, "Because creation is the antidote to decay." Lincoln drafted the Emancipation Proclamation between military defeats, his secretary noting, "He wrote as if chased by furies." That's the secret. Turn your purpose into a predator that hunts you through the night. Let discomfort become your compass. Rockefeller scheduled 5 minutes of daily silence to audit his decisions, a ritual more vital than board meetings. The cemetery's residents had dreams. The legends had non-negotiable rituals that outlived moods. Victory doesn't crown the visionary. It anoints the negotiator of adversity. Edison didn't just endure 10,000 failures. He weaponized them. Each shattered filament became data. Now I know 1,200 elements that don't work. Ford's first company went bankrupt. Carnegie's bridge collapsed into the Mississippi. Lincoln lost 8 elections before the presidency. Their resilience wasn't stoicism. It was aggressive adaptation. Hill uncovered this in his 20-year study. Every adversity carries the seed of equivalent advantage. But harvesting it requires dismantling disasters like watchmakers. After Disney's animators defected to Universal, he didn't lament. He invented multiplane camera technology, making Snow White inevitable. When Tesla's lab burned, destroying years of work, he told reporters, "The fire released me from old obligations. Now I build greater things." Your obstacles aren't barriers, they're diagnostics. That rejected proposal? It reveals where your pitch bleeds. That financial rupture? It exposes dependencies to incinerate. Lincoln mastered this during the Civil War, transforming McClellan's cowardice into an opportunity to promote Grant, the butcher who'd win the war. Scars aren't souvenirs of pain. They're tactical maps for the next campaign. The final confession. Dying dreams aren't stolen. They're surrendered. Hill wrote it plainly. The most common cause of failure is quitting when overtaken by temporary defeat. But I'll engrave it on your conscience. Legends don't retire. They either win or die fighting. Carnegie sold his empire not to golf, but to flood America with libraries. Rockefeller spent his final years eradicating hookworm. Curie worked with radioactive elements until her bones glowed. Their final breaths weren't sighs, they were transmissions. Your dream doesn't need permission. It needs possession. Ford's assembly line wasn't invented. It was commandeered from slaughterhouse conveyors. Shakespeare stole plots from Holinshed's chronicles. Picasso declared, "Good artists copy. Great artists steal. Stop curating your dream. Hijack it from the grave of convention." Lincoln didn't wait for Congress to end slavery. He wielded wartime powers like a scalpel. Now feel this truth in your marrow. That idea you're nurturing, it's rotting. That someday plan, it's a eulogy waiting for a corpse. Edison's light bulb moment was an inspiration. It was the culmination of 14 months without a day off, sleeping on lab benches, inhaling toxic fumes. Dreams aren't claimed through intention. They're seized through exhaustion. So here's your ultimatum. Carve your name on something larger than your tombstone. Not tomorrow. Not when the planets align. Now. Lincoln didn't wait to end slavery. Curie didn't pause for better labs. They acted with what Hill called the sustained application of will to purpose. Your tools are already in hand. That anger at injustice, forge it into resolve. That envy of others' success, convert it into fuel. That memory of your father's resignation, let it be the accelerant. Look at Carnegie's epitaph. Here lies a man who knew how to enlist the service of better men than himself. Not a word about steel. Your legacy isn't what you accumulate. It's the dormant potential you awaken in others. Ford knew this when he doubled wages to $5 per day, not from charity, but because workers should afford what they build. That decision didn't just create customers. It birthed the American middle class. The cemetery's gates are open. The grave is dug. Your dream lies on the precipice, polished, perfect, and lifeless. Or you ignite it today, not with hope, with action that leaves blisters, with persistence that terrifies mediocrity, with a purpose that outlasts your heartbeat. History's door is ajar. Kick it off its hinges. Burn the plans. Steal the materials. Assemble your masterpiece in the storm. They'll call you reckless. They'll call you mad. Let your epithet echo through eternity. Here lies a dream thief, a conqueror of the possible, a monument to unfinished potential finally, violently claimed.